breaths. Her husband beat her for eating too much. A cowboy saw it and growled, "Pack your things tonight." The cowboy rode slowly as the sun dropped low in the sky. The land around him was wide and quiet, with dry grass moving gently in the evening wind. His horse was tired just like him, but he kept going because stopping meant facing his thoughts. He had been on the road for many weeks, moving from town to town, never staying long enough to build roots. Every place felt the same to him now. Dusty roads, wooden buildings, and people who looked at strangers with careful eyes. As he came closer to the small frontier town, he pulled his hat lower, not to hide but out of habit. Life had taught him that being noticed was not always a good thing. He had made mistakes in his past, and even though no one in this town knew him, he still carried the weight of those memories on his shoulders. The town appeared quiet, with only a few people walking along the main road. A bell above the general store door rang as someone walked out carrying a small sack of supplies. The cowboy stopped near the edge of town and looked around. He did not rush inside. He always liked to watch first. The way people moved, the way they talked, the way they looked at strangers. These small things told him whether a place was safe to stay, even for a short time. Some towns welcomed travelers. Others only tolerated them. This one felt careful, like it had seen trouble before and did not want to see it again. He guided his horse toward a water trough and let it drink. While the horse lowered its head, the cowboy leaned back in the saddle and took a slow breath. The smell of dust, leather, and wood filled the air. It reminded him of many other places, many other stops along his long road. He wondered, as he often did, how his life had become like this, always moving, never settling, always searching but never sure for what. People in town noticed him. A few men stood near the saloon and watched quietly. They did not smile, but they did not look angry either. They were simply curious. A stranger always brought questions. Was he trouble? Was he honest? Was he just passing through? The cowboy had learned not to take these looks personally. He had given the same looks to strangers when he had still belonged somewhere. He tied his horse and stepped down. His boots touched the dirt road, and for a moment he just stood there, feeling the ground beneath him. It was a small thing, but it reminded him that he was still moving forward, even if he did not always know why. He adjusted his jacket and walked toward the general store. He needed food, water, and maybe a little information about work. Inside the store, the air was cooler. Shelves were lined with simple goods: flour, beans, tools, and cloth. The storekeeper, an older man with tired eyes, looked up and studied him for a second before giving a small nod. "Passing through?" the man asked. "Maybe," the cowboy replied calmly. "Depends if there's work."
The storekeeper gave a short, thoughtful sound.
"Work's not easy to find, but sometimes ranches need a hand." "You looking to stay long?" "I don't know yet," the cowboy said honestly. In towns like this, people understood that some men did not have clear plans. The cowboy bought a few supplies and thanked the man before stepping back outside. As he walked, he noticed a few people whispering, not loudly, just enough for him to feel their attention. He had learned to live with that too. As he moved toward the edge of town again, he noticed a small path leading away from the main road. It led toward open land, closer to where Apache families were known to live. The town and the Apache land were close, but there was always an invisible line between them. Some people crossed it easily. Others never did. The cowboy had no strong feelings about it. He believed land belonged to no one and everyone at the same time. He followed the path a short distance, not for any special reason, but because something about the quiet there felt different. The noise of town faded, replaced by wind and distant sounds of nature. That was when he saw her for the first time. She was standing near a small wooden fence, her posture straight, her face calm but serious. She looked like someone who had carried heavy burdens and learned to stand anyway. Her clothes were simple, but clean and cared for. Her eyes, when they lifted, did not show fear. They showed awareness, like she had learned to read people quickly. The cowboy did not stop right away. He did not want to make her uncomfortable. He slowed his steps, giving her space. She noticed him, of course. People like her always notice changes in their surroundings. Their eyes met for a brief moment. It was not a long stare, but it was long enough for something quiet to pass between them. Curiosity, caution, and something else neither of them could name. People in town had spoken about an Apache widow, though they did not say much. They spoke in low voices as if her story belonged to sadness and respect at the same time. The cowboy had not asked questions. He believed everyone had a story they did not want to explain to strangers. Still, standing there, he had a feeling that this woman carried a deep one. She did not turn away. That alone surprised him. Many people looked away from strangers, especially from men who looked like they had lived hard lives. But she held his gaze for a moment, then looked back to what she was doing. Bess. It was a simple action, but it told him something important. She was not afraid, but she was careful. He continued walking, keeping a respectful distance. He did not speak to her. Not yet. He was not the kind of man who forced conversation where it did not belong. Still, as he passed, he felt a strange pull, like his journey had shifted slightly, even if he could not explain why. As he walked on, his mind returned to his past. He remembered other towns, other faces, other chances he had not taken or had taken for the wrong reasons. He had learned that quick choices often led to long regrets. Now he tried to move slower in life, to think before acting, to listen more than speak. He was tired of being the man who rushed into things and walked away when they became difficult. The sun was lower now, painting the land in soft orange light. The cowboy found a place near the edge of town where he could rest for the night. He set up a simple camp and fed his horse. As he sat near a small fire, he found his thoughts returning to the woman by the fence. Not in a careless way, but in a thoughtful one, inspiration. He wondered about her life, about what had shaped her calm strength, about what kind of loss made a person stand so quietly and firmly at the same time. He reminded himself not to make stories in his head. Life was never as simple as it looked from the outside. Still, something about this town felt different from the others. It was not just the land or the people. It was a feeling, like his long road had brought him here for a reason he did not yet understand. In town, people continued their evening routines. Lamps were lit, doors were closed. Quiet conversations filled small rooms. Somewhere the Apache widow finished her work and prepared to return to her own space, carrying her thoughts just as the cowboy carried his. Neither of them knew yet that their paths had crossed for more than just a passing moment. That night, as the cowboy lay under the open sky, he stared at the stars. He thought about how small a person felt under such a wide world. He had spent so much time running from his past that he had almost forgotten how to stand still and face the present. For the first time in a long while, he felt a small sense of change, like a door had opened quietly, waiting for him to decide whether to step through. He did not know her name. He did not know her story, but he knew one thing. This town and this woman had already made him slow down. And for a man who had spent his life running, slowing down was the first step towards something new. The morning came slowly, with soft light spreading over the land. The cowboy woke before the town fully stirred. He sat up, stretched his tired arms, and looked around. The air was cool, and the quiet felt peaceful. For a moment, he forgot his worries and simply listened to the sounds of birds and distant movement. His horse stood nearby, calm and patient, as if it understood this place was different. In another part of the land, the Apache widow was already awake. Her days often started early. She had learned that keeping busy helped keep heavy thoughts away. She moved carefully inside her small home, preparing for the day with steady hands. Every action had a purpose. She did not rush, but she did not waste time either.
Life had taught her to be strong, but also to be gentle with herself when no one else was watching. Her home held simple things that carried deep meaning.
A blanket folded neatly, a few tools for daily work, and small personal items that reminded her of better times. She did not look at these things for long. Some memories were too heavy to hold in the early hours of the day. Still, they were always there, quietly shaping her thoughts and her heart. People in the nearby town had many opinions about her, though few truly knew her. Some felt sorry for her. Some were curious. Some looked at her with thoughts that made her uncomfortable. She had learned to recognize those looks and protect herself from them. Her life had already been shaped by loss, and she refused to let anyone turn her pain into something shallow or careless. She stepped outside and felt the morning air on her face. It helped her feel grounded. The land around her was familiar. Every path, every small change in the wind, every sound had meaning. It reminded her that even when people failed her, the land remained steady. It did not judge. It simply existed, strong and patient. As she worked through her morning tasks, her mind returned, without her wanting it to the stranger she had seen the day before. The cowboy had not looked at her the way others did. There had been no quick smile, no bold words, no careless confidence. Instead, there was something quieter in his eyes. She could not explain it fully, but she felt that he carried his own kind of pain. Bear of it. She did not trust easily. Life had taught her that trust was something to be earned slowly, through actions, not words. Still, she could not stop herself from wondering who he was and why he had come to this place. Travelers came and went, but most did not leave a strong impression. This one had, even though they had not spoken. The cowboy, after finishing his simple breakfast, decided to walk into town again. He wanted to see if there was any work and to get a better sense of the place. As he walked, he noticed how people greeted each other. There was familiarity, but also caution. This was a town that had seen both good and bad. Bare. It had learned to survive by being careful. He stopped near a small building where a few men were talking about ranch work and repairs. He listened quietly, then offered his help. He did not speak with pride or force, but he simply said he could work, that he was used to hard days and long hours. The men looked him over, judging his strength, his honesty, and his attitude. One man, older and clearly respected, nodded slowly. "We might have something for you." "Not much, but honest work. That's all I'm looking for," the cowboy replied. As arrangements were made, the cowboy felt a small sense of relief. Honest work meant food, a place to stay, and a reason to remain in one place for a while. He told himself that this was practical, nothing more. Still, a part of him wondered if his decision to stay was also connected to the quiet woman near the edge of town. Meanwhile, the Apache widow went into town for her own reasons. She did not go often, but sometimes it was necessary. As she walked, she felt eyes on her. She had learned to walk with confidence, not because she felt powerful, but because showing weakness only invited trouble. Her face remained calm, even when her heart felt heavy. Some people greeted her kindly. Others simply watched. She accepted both without reacting. She had learned that not every look deserved a response. What mattered was how she saw herself. She reminded herself that she was more than a widow, more than a story people whispered about. She was a woman who had survived, and that mattered. It was near the general store that their paths crossed again. This time, they were closer. The cowboy saw her first and slowed his steps. He did not want to surprise her. She noticed him almost at the same time. For a brief moment, neither spoke. The space between them felt full, as if many unspoken words were waiting. He tipped his hat slightly, a simple sign of respect. But she nodded in return. It was a small exchange, but it carried meaning. It said, "I see you," without saying anything more. Neither of them smiled widely. This was not a moment for easy smiles. It was a moment of careful acknowledgement. The widow felt something shift inside her. It was not excitement. It was not fear. It was something closer to curiosity, mixed with caution. She had been looked at in many ways before, but this felt different. He did not seem to be measuring her or judging her. He seemed to be simply aware of her presence, as one human being noticing another. The cowboy, too, felt the weight of the moment. He reminded himself not to assume anything. He had made that mistake before, thinking he understood people before he truly did. Still, he could not ignore the sense that this woman's strength came from deep places shaped by loss and survival. They passed each other without speaking, but the moment stayed with both of them. The widow continued her business, her mind quieter but more focused. The cowboy returned to his work arrangements, feeling more settled than he had in a long time. As the day went on, both of them carried on with their separate lives. The widow helped where she was needed, kept to herself, and protected her private thoughts. The cowboy worked hard, showing through action that he was dependable. People began to see that he was not just another passing traveler. He was someone willing to earn his place, even if only for a short time. In quiet moments, the widow thought about her past. Pain. About the love she had lost. About the life she had once imagined. Breath. These thoughts did not make her weak. They reminded her of what she had survived. She had learned that pain could either break a person or make them stronger. She had chosen strength, even on days when it was hard. The cowboy, too, faced his memories as he worked. The physical effort helped keep his mind focused, but memories still came. He thought about chances he had wasted and people he had let down. He did not blame others anymore. He had learned to take responsibility for his choices. Now he wanted to be better, even if no one from his past ever saw the change. As evening came, the town slowed again. The widow returned to her home, tired but steady. The cowboy finished his work and felt the good kind of exhaustion that came from honest effort. Both of them in their own spaces felt that something had begun to change, even if they could not yet name it. They did not know each other's stories yet. They did not know each other's wounds. But they had seen something familiar in each other, a quiet strength, a careful heart, and a life shaped by lessons that could not be learned easily. The land around them held their secrets for now. The wind carried away unspoken thoughts. The stars would soon come out again, watching over two people who had not yet spoken. but whose lives had already begun to touch in small, meaningful ways. The days that followed moved slowly, but with quiet meaning. The cowboy settled into his work, waking early and returning tired but satisfied. The town began to see him not as a stranger, but as a man who kept his word. He fixed fences, helped with animals, and did whatever was needed without complaint. His actions spoke for him, and people started to trust him little by little. The Apache widow watched these changes from a distance. Breath. She did not ask about him directly, but she noticed how people spoke about him differently now. Where there had once been curiosity, there was now respect. She paid attention to such things. Life had taught her that how a person treated work often showed how they treated people. One afternoon, a small problem brought their paths together in a way that could not be avoided. A delivery meant for the widow's home had been left in town by mistake. It was something she needed for her daily work. When she went to collect it, she found that the package was heavier than she expected. She tried to lift it, but it was awkward and difficult to manage alone. The cowboy happened to be nearby. He saw her struggle and hesitated for a moment. He did not want to assume she needed help. He respected her strength, but he also believed that offering help was not the same as taking control. Slowly and calmly, he stepped closer. "Would you like a hand with that?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle. She looked at him, reading his face and his tone. She did not hear pride or control in his words. She heard simple concern. After a short pause, she nodded. "Yes."
"That would help," she said. Together they lifted the package.
It was easier with two people. As they walked, there was a quiet space between them. It was not uncomfortable. It was simply new. Neither rushed to fill it with words. They carried the package part of the way before she spoke again. "Despatime, you're new here," she said, not as a question, but as a simple statement. "I am," he replied. "I don't plan too far ahead. I go where the work is." That kind of life can be hard. He looked at her for a moment. So can staying in one place. She met his eyes briefly, understanding that he was not just talking about land or towns. He was talking about life. They continued walking, the conversation light but meaningful. When they reached her place, he set the package down carefully. He did not step inside or look around more than necessary. He respected her space. That small action did not go unnoticed by her. "Thank you," she said. "You're welcome," he replied simply. He turned to leave, but something in her stopped him. Not physically, but emotionally. She had a question forming in her mind, one that had been growing since their first meeting. It was not a careless question. It came from years of being looked at in ways that made her feel unseen as a person. "Wait," she said softly. He stopped and turned back. She took a breath, steadying herself. "They come for reasons that are not kind. They see only what they want to see. Ace, not who I am." He listened without interrupting. Despair, despair, despair. He did not look away. Breath. He gave her his full attention. She continued, her voice calm but honest. "You do not look at me like that. It makes me wonder why." The cowboy felt the weight of her words. He understood more than she might realize. He had seen how people judged others without knowing their stories. He had done it himself in the past and had regretted it. "I've made mistakes," he said after a moment.
I've looked at people the wrong way before. I learned that it only leads to empty endings.
These days I try to see the person first. Their body has my face. Bleh. She had become skilled at noticing small signs. Hesitation, dishonesty, false confidence. She did not see those things in him. What she saw was a man who carried regret and a desire to be better. "That matters," she said quietly. There was a pause. The wind moved gently through the area, and for a moment, neither spoke. Bay. The silence did not feel heavy. It felt thoughtful. Then she asked the question that had been building in her heart, not with anger or accusation, but with honesty and vulnerability. "Do you see me the same way others do?" she asked, Bray. "Or do you see me as something more than what they think I am?" The cowboy did not answer right away. He wanted to be careful. Burrs. Words could hurt as much as actions if they were not chosen with care.
I see someone who has survived things most people don't understand, he said slowly.
I see someone strong, even when she doesn't have to be. I don't see you as something to take or use. I see you as a person who deserves respect. Her breath caught slightly, not because of surprise, but because of relief. Bait. She had not heard words like that directed at her in a long time, not words that felt honest and without hidden meaning. "That is not what most men say," she admitted. "I'm not trying to be like most men," he replied. They shared a small, quiet smile. It was not a joyful smile. Best. It was a gentle one, filled with understanding. From that moment, something changed between them. They did not suddenly become close. They did not share deep secrets, but a door had opened, a door of trust, small but real. Over the next days, they spoke more often, but always with care. Sometimes it was just a few words when they passed in town. Sometimes it was a longer conversation while working nearby. They learned small things about each other. Bay, where he had traveled, how she had grown up. Simple details that slowly built a picture of two lives, shaped by different paths but similar pain. The widow found herself thinking differently about the future. Not in big dreams, but in small ways. She noticed how she stood a little taller when she walked. How she felt a little less alone in a world that often felt heavy. The cowboy, too, felt a change. He had not realized how lonely he had become until he felt what it was like to be truly seen again. Not judged. Not measured. Just seen as a man trying to do better. Still, both of them remained careful. They had both been hurt before. They knew that moving too fast could undo what little trust they had built. So they let things grow slowly, like plants that needed time to take root. One evening, as the sun set and painted the land with warm colors, they stood at a distance, watching the day end. They did not speak much. Bay did not need to. The silence between them felt shared, not empty. In that quiet, both of them felt it. The moment that would change everything was getting closer, not because of sudden emotion, but because of steady understanding. They were two people standing at the edge of something new, unsure of what it would become, but willing to take the next step when the time came. For now, it was enough to know that they were no longer strangers. They were two lives, slowly learning to trust again. One careful moment at a time. Time passed, and with each passing day the quiet connection between the cowboy and the Apache widow grew stronger. It was not loud or obvious, but it was built from small moments, shared looks, short talks, and the comfort of knowing someone understood without needing many words. Both of them had learned in life that the deepest connections often grew in silence and patience. One afternoon, a strong windstorm moved through the area. The sky turned dark earlier than usual, and dust filled the air. People hurried to secure their homes and animals. The widow worked quickly to protect what she could. As the wind grew stronger, she struggled to hold a loose piece of wood that had come free near her home. The wind pushed against her, making it hard to manage alone. Chris' affectionate work saw what was happening. Without thinking too much, he ran toward her and helped hold the wood in place. Bears. Together, they worked against the wind, using their strength and teamwork. Their hands moved in rhythm, not needing many words. Bay. After the storm passed, both of them were tired and covered in dust. They stood there for a moment, catching their breath. The shared effort had brought them closer in a way words could not. "You didn't have to come," she said, though there was gratitude in her voice. "I wanted to," he replied. "That's different." She nodded. Psst. She understood the difference. Helping because you had to was not the same as helping because you cared. They sat nearby, letting the quiet return. The land looked changed after the storm, but also fresh, as if it had been cleaned. Best, it reminded both of them of their own lives. How hard times could damage things, but also make space for something new. It was during this calm moment that the cowboy finally shared more of his past. Not all at once, but enough for her to understand him better.
He spoke about mistakes he had made when he was younger.
About choices that had hurt others and himself. About running from responsibility because he had been afraid to face who he really was. Psst. "I thought moving all the time would fix things," he said. "But it only helped me avoid them." She listened closely, not judging. Bait. She had lived with her own kind of pain and understood how easy it was to run from it. "Facing the past is harder than riding away from it," she said gently. He gave a small, thoughtful smile.
You're right.
"That's why I'm trying to do things differently now." Then it was her turn. She did not speak often about her loss, but something about this moment felt right. She spoke about her husband, not with sadness alone, but with respect. She talked about the life they had planned, the simple dreams they had shared, and how quickly everything had changed. "I had to learn how to stand on my own," she said. "Some days I feel strong. Other days I feel tired in a way sleep cannot fix." The cowboy understood that kind of tiredness. It was the tiredness of the heart, not the body. "You shouldn't have had to carry it all alone," he said. "I did," she replied. "But I survived."
That matters. He respected her strength, but he also saw the weight she carried.
For the first time in a long while, she felt that someone truly saw both, the strength and the burden. As they talked, trust grew deeper. They did not promise anything. They did not make big plans, but they shared something rare: honesty without fear. Each word spoken felt like a small step forward. Still, not everyone in town looked kindly on their growing connection. Some people noticed. Whispers started again. Not always kind ones. Some said it was wrong for them to be close. But others said it would only bring trouble. The widow heard these things and felt the old familiar pressure of judgment. The cowboy heard it too. He had faced judgment before and knew how painful it could be.
One evening he spoke to her about it. "People will always talk," he said.
But they don't live our lives.
She looked at him seriously. Their words have caused me pain before. I won't let their words decide who I am, he replied.
And I won't let them decide how I treat you. That meant more to her than he knew. It was not a promise of love or a future. It was a promise of respect and choice. That was something she had not always been given.
There was a moment when things became even more serious. A small conflict in town created tension between different groups.
Old fears rose again. People became nervous and quick to judge. The widow felt the weight of being seen as different, even though she had lived near the town for a long time. The cowboy stood quietly beside her during this time. He did not speak loudly or tried to be a hero. He simply stayed. His presence was steady, like a wall against the wind.
Why do you stay? She asked him one evening.
You could leave. You've done it before. He thought carefully before answering. Because running is easy, he said. Staying is harder. And I'm tired of choosing the easy road. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth in his eyes. He was not staying just for work. He was staying because he wanted to face life instead of escaping it. That realization changed something inside her. She had spent so much time protecting herself that she had forgotten what it felt like to let someone stand beside her, not in front of her, not behind her, but with her. They did not rush into anything. They continued to move slowly, carefully, with respect for each other's wounds. But now, there was a deeper understanding between them. They had shared their truths. They had seen each other in moments of weakness and strength. One quiet night, as they sat under the stars, she spoke softly. I don't want to be seen as something temporary, she said. I don't want to be another stop on someone's long road. He turned to her, his voice steady and sincere. You're not, he said. Not to me. Those simple words carried great weight. They were not a promise of forever, but they were a promise of intention, of care. Person, not a passing moment. The land around them remained quiet, holding their shared silence and growing trust. The stars watched as two wounded hearts stood closer than before, not touching, not rushing, but connected by something real. They both knew that the next step would be harder. It would require courage, choice, and the strength to face not only the world but their own fears. But for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt like they had to face it alone. The days that followed felt different for both of them. Not because everything suddenly became easy, but because they now faced life with a new sense of purpose.
The cowboy woke each morning with a reason to stay. The widow went through her days with a quiet strength that felt lighter than before.
Their lives were still shaped by hard lessons, but now those lessons were shared, not carried alone. The town continued to watch them. Some people still whispered. Some people slowly accepted what they saw. But over time, more people noticed that the cowboy treated the widow with steady respect. He did not try to change her. He did not try to control her. He stood beside her as an equal. That alone began to change how others saw their connection. The widow felt the difference too. For the first time in a long while, she did not feel like she had to defend her dignity every moment. She felt seen as a whole person, not just as a widow, not just as someone with a sad past, but as a woman with strength, wisdom, and a future. One evening, as the sky turned soft with sunset colors, they walked together along a familiar path. The wind moved gently, carrying the smells of earth and grass. The land felt peaceful, as if it too was giving them space to think and breathe.
The cowboy stopped and looked out over the open land.
I used to think my life was meant to be nothing but movement, he said.
Town to town, job to job. I thought staying meant being trapped. She listened, standing quietly beside him, breaths. Now, he continued, I see that staying can mean choosing. Choosing to face things. Choosing to build something instead of running from it. She looked at him, her eyes calm and thoughtful. Bears. Choosing is not easy, she said, but it is honest. They stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of those words. Breath. Both of them had lived lives shaped by things they did not choose. Loss. Mistakes. Circumstances beyond their control. Now, for the first time in a long while, they were standing in a moment where choice belonged to them. The widow spoke next, her voice steady but full of meaning. I have spent a long time protecting myself. I had to. If I didn't, I would have lost who I was. You had every right to. But protection can become a wall, she said. And walls keep out both harm and hope. Bayes. He had built his own walls through distance and movement. I don't want to live behind walls anymore, he said quietly. Bass. Neither do I, she replied. These were not dramatic words. There was no sudden promise, but in that simple exchange, both of them knew something important had been decided. Burrs. They were choosing to be open, even if it meant risking pain. They were choosing to stay present, even when the past tried to pull them back. Fact.
Life did not suddenly become perfect. There were still hard days.
There were still moments when old fears returned. Sometimes the cowboy felt the urge to leave when things felt heavy. Sometimes the widow felt the urge to pull away when she felt vulnerable. But now, they talked about these feelings instead of hiding them. They learned that honesty, even when uncomfortable, was better than silence. They learned that strength did not mean never struggling. It meant facing struggle together. The town slowly adjusted. People began to see that their connection was not careless or shallow. It was built on respect, patience, and shared understanding. Some people even began to treat the widow with more kindness, seeing that she was not alone anymore. Not because she needed someone to save her, but because she had chosen someone who walked beside her. The cowboy became more than just a worker in town. He became someone people relied on. He stayed when things were difficult. He showed up when help was needed. Slowly, he stopped being seen as a traveler and started being seen as part of the place. One day, the widow noticed something small but meaningful. She realized she was laughing more. Not loudly or often, but honestly. The sound surprised her at first. It reminded her that joy had not left her life forever. It had only been waiting for space to return. The cowboy noticed changes in himself, too. He slept more peacefully. His thoughts were not always filled with regret. He still remembered his past, but it no longer controlled him. He was building something in the present, and that gave him a sense of direction he had not felt in years. They did not rush into naming what they were to each other. They did not need labels to understand the bond they were building. Bound. What mattered was how they treated each other every day. With care, with honesty, with the understanding that both of them were still healing. One quiet morning, as sunlight touched the land, the widow stood outside her home and watched the day begin. The cowboy stood nearby helping with a simple task. The scene was ordinary, but to her, it felt extraordinary. For the first time in a long time, her life did not feel defined only by what she had lost. It was also being shaped by what she was choosing to build. She looked at him and spoke softly. I don't know what the future holds.
He smiled gently.
Neither do I. But I know this, she said. I'm not afraid of it, the way I used to be. Neither am I. That shared courage was their true victory. Brave. Not over other people, not over the past, but over the fear that had once ruled their lives. The land around them remained wide and open just as it had always been. But now, instead of feeling lost in that wide world, they felt grounded. They had found something steady in each other, not to replace what they had lost, but to grow from it. Their story was not one of perfect endings. It was a story of new beginnings built on real choices. Of two people who had been shaped by pain but refused to let pain be the final word. As the sun rose higher, bringing light to the land, the cowboy and the Apache widow stood side by side. Not because they needed each other to survive, but because they chose to walk forward together. And in that choice, they found something stronger than fear, stronger than loss, and stronger than the past. They found hope.